it really shouldn't be so, because the kurva that's necessary for Yerusha is the kurva of Mishpacha. Mishpacha, the Gemara has the pasuk in the beginning of Bamidbar, Mishpacha Sal Kuyi Mishpacha, Mishpacha Sem Ene Kuyi Mishpacha. So really, let's say when the son dies, the mother does not yarshan the son, because the only kroivim mitzad ha'im. It's only if the mother dies and the son yarshans the mother. Usually by Yerusha, whoever dies first, the other one yarshans. But it's not always the case. So the ben Yerusha Sima is a separate din. The Gemara says is based on the idea of vein kom tachasima, kom tachtiv, kom tachtav. The Gemara has this discussion in different places. So take for example, if I buy an Amo HaEvriya, so there's a mitzvah, Hashalo Ya'ada. Hashalo Ya'ada is a Kriya Ksiv. It's written, I think, it's written, Hashalo Lamed Aleph, Hashalo Ya'ada, V'hefta, Lam Nachre L'Yishemach, L'Marcha B'Vigdai Bo. So that's a Kriya Ksiv. You read Hashalo Ya'ada Lamed Vav. It's a mitzvah on the Adon to be Miyayid, the Amo HaEvriya. And then the pasuk says, and what if there's a big age gap between the Adon and the Amavriya? Amavriya can't be past the age of 12 and a half. Usually Amavriya goes free when she becomes a Gedolah, at the age of 12, if she has Sdei Cyrus. And sometimes she doesn't bring Sdei Cyrus, so then when she becomes older, when she becomes a Gedolah older, then she'll be Yotze L'Cheres. So the one who bought the Amavriya could be that he's in his 50s. Not sure that he should be miyai. The young girl is only 12 years old, 11 years old. So the pasuk says, "Im libno yadena." What kind of a din is that? That's a din of Yerusha. That the father had the right to do yud, so the son has the right to do yud. It's not a din of Yerusha. It's a din haben kam tachasaviv liyado. That's the loshkam. It's a din of kam tachasav. Well, let's say a man is married and he dies. So his wife needs chalitza yibum only if he has no children. If he has children, there's no chalitza yibum. So the Gemara said, "Haben kam tachasaviv," with respect to that din. It's not a din; it's nothing to do with Yerusha. It's a din. The bain continues the family of the father. The father died. So if there are children, so there's no zik at all. There's no yibum chalitza. There are no children, then there's a din. So that's a din. Haben kam tachasaviv. That's the yiyud, and that's when I get to the din of yibam chalitza. Then the Gemara haben kam tachasaviv the Sdei Achuzah. What's the Sdei Achuzah? If you own real estate in Eretz Yisrael, sometimes it's a Sdei Mikneh. Sometimes it says Sdei Achuzah, Sdei Mikdim. Sdei Achuzah means Yeshua ben Nun divided Eretz Yisrael, the Shvatim, the Mishpachas, and then the Yechidim. So if I am a descendant of someone, my father, grandfather, great-grandfather, all the way back to the days of Yeshua ben Nun, so that's a Sdei Achuzah. When it comes Yovel, I don't have to give it back to somebody else. If I bought it from someone else, if I bought the karka from someone else, then when it comes Yovel, it goes back to the rightful owner. Today there is no Yovel. But Bisman Yovel, no, it goes back. So the din is, if I want to donate something to Hegdish, so how long does it belong to Hegdish? And let's say if I own a Sdei Mikneh, I bought it, I only own it until Yovel. When it comes Yovel, I lose my ownership. It goes back to the original owner. So if I have a Sdei Mikneh and I magdish it, I can't donate to Hegdish more than I myself own. I only own this soda up until Yovel. So when it comes Yovel, it goes back to the rightful owner. But if I own a Sdei Achuzah, I got to be Rusha, I'm not going to have to surrender it when it comes Yovel. So it belongs to me, Li'olam Voed. So if I donate it to Hegdish, so it belongs to Hegdish, Li'olam Voed. So then the din is that if Hegdish sells it to someone else, when it comes, really, I have a Sdei Achuzah, I donate it to Hegdish, belongs to Hegdish, Li'olam Voed. Then the Gizra of Hegdish sells it to somebody. So if the Gizra of Hegdish sells it back to me, I was the one who donated to Hegdish, he sells it back. I'm paid it. Then is if the person who is Magdash at this point has to be Moisev Chaimish, has to add more. He doesn't just give the value of this Achuzah, it has to be Moisev Chaimish. So if he sells it back to me, so reverts back to become a Achuzah. But if it says in the Chumash, if the one who is Magdash, the Achuzah, is not paid it, the Gizba shall have the solder to a stranger, so then the Yotza by Yovel, so Hegdish owns it beyond the boy. When the Gizba shall Hegdish sells it to Ish Acher, so Hegdish could have theoretically sold it to him, void. But the Chumash says, no, this is one of the Chav Daled Matnas Kahuna. If somebody was Magdash as the Achuzah, and they sold it to Ish Acher, the Ish Acher only keeps it till Yovel. Like if the Ish Acher would buy my field, he only keeps it till Yovel. Here he bought a field from Hegdish. Hegdish owns it void. So when it comes Yovel, he loses the Ish Acher who is paid there. When you buy it, you have in mind how long are you going to have it. Just let's say it's only 3 years to Yovel, so you don't pay $100 million. You're only going to have it for 2-3 years when Yovel comes. But if somebody has a Achuzah that belongs to him, Yovel void. So if he gives it to Hegdish, it belongs to Hegdish, Yovel void. When Hegdish sells it to someone, he's buying it. It's a Sdei Miktam by him. Doesn't become a Sdei Achuzah. He didn't get it Birusha from his father, grandfather, great grandfather, all the way back till Yeshua ben Nun. So he only has it till Yom Kippur Shel Yovel. Comes Yom Kippur Shel Yovel, then it's divided among the Kohanim. Sdei Achuzah is one of the 24 Matas Kuna. So the Gemara has a comment, a drasha from the time, Machas Asad Alish Acher, La'acher V'lo L'bein. Only if the Gizba sold it to a stranger. If he sells it back to the one who is Magdash, it reverts back to become a Sdei Achuzah. What if he sells it, I'm still alive, he sells it to my son. After I die, my son is going to get it Birusha. So my son is the one who bought it. So the Gemara says, Habein is kom Tachtav v'liyado, for Yehud purposes, Ilumno Yadena, v'listei Achuzah. Because the Widarshan Bein v'loy Acher. Machas Asad Alish Acher, a Bein and a Acher are opposites. So the Lashon of the Pasuk is, if the Gizba shall Hegdish sold it to Ish Acher, means he didn't sell it back to the Magdish, nor did he sell it back to the son of the Magdish. If he sells it back to the son, ultimately it's going to become it would have become a Sdei Achuzah by the son. So it reverts back to become a Sdei Achuzah in that case.
Does the son pay a chumash in that case?
Does the son pay a chumash when he buys it from the Gizbar? I don't think so. Only the Magdish Losev Chumash and the Skaper Osa Tmura. The Magdish. Let's say you took an edit to bring a carbon shlomim, whatever, and then you realize you can't afford it. So your next door neighbor feels bad for you. So he's Magdish a carbon shlomim on your behalf. And he doesn't want to embarrass you. So he sends a letter to the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash. He sends them a check for $1,000. My next door neighbor, so-and-so, took an edit to bring a shlomim. I don't want to embarrass him. I know he doesn't have the money. The Gemara applies it over there. I'm doing a taiva for you. So I give the $1,000. The Kohanim should be mafresh a carbon. So, but you should be miskaper. The bala carbon is you, but I'm the magdish. The Gemara learns out from Sukkim that such a thing exists. By carbon tzibah, you can't have like that. By carbon tzibah, let's say, during Baisheni period, they had a lot of trouble from the Tzedukim. The Tzedukim didn't follow the traditions of the Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Tzedukim announced that if a wealthy family wants to sponsor all the Hakrovas carbon tzibur for the year, they can give $5 million and we'll hang up a plaque in the Beis HaMikdash. All the carbonas have been taken care of by the Weinberg family this year. So that's in Baisheni. When the Tzedukim were running the show, that's what they did. And then when the Chachamim kicked them out, many of the Kohanim in the Beis HaMikdash were Tzedukim. So the periods of time that they were always doing everything wrong, not in accordance with the Torah Shabbat Peh. So the Gemara says, there's a Megillas Tainus. There's a list of Yamim Tovim that the Tanoim introduced Bizman Bayisheni. The Chalim introduced. All the Yamim Tovim revolved about things in the Beis Hamikdash. So one of those Yamim Tovim is Itoikim Tamida, when the Korban Tabin was established properly. In other words, the Chachamim kicked out the Tzdukim, and they didn't allow this anymore. That an individual family is going to donate $5 million, and all the Korban Sibur will be funded by them. It only works by a Korban Yochid. If you took a neder, you were Mechal Shabbos B'Shegi, you have to bring a chatzos, he can't afford it. So then I'll send the next door neighbor feels bad for you. He sends in money. He said, don't embarrass him. Don't tell him who. Tell him the chatzos was taken care of. So there's such a thing as learned out from a post in such an institution. I'm magdish am manashi iskapa b'chavera. I'm magdish the Korban, but I want them in the Beis Hamikdash to be makriv it on behalf. When they shech karbonis, the Mishnah says the shem shisha dvorim azebach nizbach. When they shech karbonis, not only shchita, when you do the whole hakravas hakorban, but when you mark the korban, you're supposed to have lishmoa, 6 different lishmoas. So one of the lishmoas is who is the bala korban, on whose behalf are we offering the korban? So sometimes it's not the same person who is magdashit. Normally the person mechuyev to bring the korban, he's magdashit and they're makrav it on his behalf. But if he can't afford it, then the friends and the neighbors feel bad for him. So then someone else will step in, and they'll be Magdish and Amanashi Skapa V'Chavero. So the Tzedukim felt that works by Korban Tzibur also, and that's not what the Torah Shabbal Peh says. Tradition has it that by Korban Tzibur, it's only called a Korban Tzibur if it's purchased with the Machzah Shekel money. Machzah Shekel, let's say if you have all the Jews alive today will put up money and they'll bring Korbanos, that's not called a Korban Tzibur. Korban Tzibur, the Tzibur includes the people all the way back from Avram Avinu till the Mos HaMashiach. Tzibur means all of Klal Yisrael. Korban Tzibur is a korban on behalf of everybody. That's a korban hashutfin. If you have all the Jews alive today, each one puts up $1. Now have a few $1 million. That's a korban hashutfin. It's only a korban tzibur. The tzibur means those who died already. Einat alpidin, einat tzibur mason. No such thing that Klal Yisrael does. Klal Yisrael means the Jews from the days of Avraham Avinu till Yemos HaMashiach. Everybody's called Klal Yisrael. So it's only considered a korban tzibur. The minimum musafim has to be a korban tzibur. If it's purchased with machzah shekel money, that's exeris hakos by chidush din. That the machzah shekel is considered the mammon of all of Klal Yisrael, living or dead. Everybody's included. But if it's a private family puts up the money, then it's not considered a korban tzibur. So the Gemara says in that case, where you have one person who was magdish but the korban is offered on behalf of the other person, who's if he gets a mum, he can't be paid a korban unless it has a mum kavua. So let's say the korban has a mum kavua. So who has to be Moshe Chaimish? Who's the bailam? So the Gemara says magdish Moshe Chaimish and miskaper oisa tmura. Only the bala korban has to. When the bala korban is paid the hegdish, you only be paid a hegdish if it gets a mum kavua. So only the bala korban has to be Moshe Chaimish. If someone else does not, who's called the bala korban? So the Gemara comes to the maskana, the first daf in Tamura, magdish Moshe Chaimish. Miskaper oisa tmura. But the only one who can make Tamura is the bala korban, or he can give me permission. I say, you magdish such a skinny animal. It's not bekovadik. Give me permission, I'll switch it. I'll make Tamura a bigger, better, fatter korban, a nicer korban. So a stranger can't make Tamura. You're mafashika. One of my balabas is a HaEzer tachazu. But if you give me permission, then I can make Tamura. It's an avera if you make Tamura. They're going to give me malchus for that. But I can only make Tamura if I'm the bala korban, or the bala korban gave me permission. Who's called the bala korban? So the din is the miskaper is oisa Tamura. The miskaper is the bala korban vis-a-vis asiyas Tamura, and smicha also. Smicha can only be done by the bala korban. So if it's not the bala korban, then you don't do any smicha. Let's say a person was mafresh a korban and he dies. So the Yorshim are makriv the korban. It depends what kind of a korban. It's a chatas of an osham. So it's not bo ben edom and adov. It's only the one who needs the kapara. Let's say the father did an avera and he's mafresh a korban chatas and he dies before he had a chance to be makriv it. So chatas shenesa by leho. You can't be makriv it for a person en kapara lamesim. And the father set it aside for his Chilul Shabbos, for his whatever he ate Chayil V'Dam. So the son can't be Makarvin on his own behalf. The Chatas and Osham, they're different dinim there. They're different dinim. But by a Shlomim, if the owner of the korban dies, so the children, Shlomim, Ma'ila, so the children will bring the korban. So that's a big machlokes hatanoim, because do the children have the status of a bala korban? They have, the Gemara is loshon, they have partial kapara. The korban that the father set aside for himself, a Shlomim and an Oila, and he dies, so the children bring it, so they're the miskaper. Now the children, the dead person can't ain't kapara l'meisa. So the miskaper is the children, but they only get a superficial kapara. That's the Lashon of the Gemara. It's the Yorshim get a kapara mikufya, v'lo mikiba. Kufya means superficially. They get a partial kapara, but not a full kapara. So that's a machlekes hatanaim. The first half in Tmura, and it's in Shas and many different places. Whether Yorish Meimer or Yorish Soimech or not. Does the Yorish have enough status as Bala Korban to make Tmura, or to give permission to someone else to make Tmura? Does he have enough status as Bala Korban to do Smicha? The Smicha can only be done by the Bala Korban. If he sends the Korban out, they Shliach to the Beis Hamikdash, the Shliach can do the Smicha for him. Either the Bala Korban comes in person and he does the Smicha, or you don't have Smicha. That's all. Smicha is not miyakes. Even when it is required, if he just didn't do it, it's not miyakes. So it's interesting. So that's the Lashon HaPasuk is the Gizbar Macharas Hasada Leish Acher LaAcher V'Lo LeBein, that a Bein is Mamid Sdei Achuzah. It reverts back if the son, the father was Magdish Sdei Achuzah. Sdei Achuzah you own it L'Olam Vod. Sdei Miknei only own up until Yom. So if the father was Magdish Sdei Achuzah, it's forever. He gives it to Hekdesh, it belongs to Hekdesh forever. And Hekdesh sells it to someone. So the guy who bought it and says, Sdei Miknei, you lose your ownership when it comes Yom Kippur Shalev. So it goes back to Hekdesh. What is Hekdesh going to do with it? So the pasuk says it's mischalek lekohanim. Which kohanim? So the Tana I'm talking about. Which kohanim do it? So it's interesting. There was a Tana, Elisha ben Abuya, and there was so much. The Romans were persecuting the Jews so much. So Elisha ben Abuya gave up on the whole Jewish religion. How can it be true? They're killing all the Tanoim. So he gave up on everything. The Gemara says that there are two mitzvahs, but the Torah promises Arichas Yomim, Shiluach Hakan, Kibbut Aviyim. There are more than two, but the Gemara only points out these two. Elisha ben Abuya once saw the father asked his son to do Shiluach Hakan, and then the son got killed. He fell down the ladder, he got killed. Elisha ben Abuya said, how can it be? The Torah promises Arichas Yomim. If you do Kibbut Aviyim and you do Shiluach Hakan, here he did both, and he lost his life, so he gave up on the Jewish religion. But the Yerushalmi has more stories. There was so much persecution for the Romans that he gave up on the whole religion. And he was the one who told the Romans what to do. They should prohibit smicha, so there won't be any. But the dinim will be able to make Kiddush HaChodesh. They should prohibit bris milah, because every time the Romans would conquer another country, they would pressure all the people in the country to give up their avodah zarah and to adopt their avodah zarah. And the only ones who didn't, they weren't successful, was the Jewish people. And so they didn't give in. They kept on. They gave up their lives. Al Kiddush Hashem, many enough gave up their lives that they couldn't succeed in changing. So Elisha ben Abuya was the one who was helping them out. So the Gemara said they called them Acher. They called them Acher. So the Gemara has long discussions about the Acher in Maseches Chagiga. So the Gemara says, on one occasion, he heard a baskol. He heard a baskol come out from heaven. Shuva banim shavavim levad me Acher. Everyone's tshuva will be accepted except for Acher. So he realized that his tshuva won't be accepted. So they told him that you're wrong. The tshuva will be accepted. So the Gemara says that ultimately he was HaEzer b'tshuva. The Gemara has like ultimately and Talmud of Rab Meir. The Gemara says usually there's a din you're not allowed to learn by a Rebbe who's not the Yerei Shamayim. And Marab Doim ala Malach Hashem Tzvakas Yivakshir Torah Mipihu Im Lava Yivakshir. The Gemara says based on a pasuk in Navi Torah Yerech Shmin Pihu Ki Malach Hashem Tzvakosu. The Gemara says if the Rebbe seems to be angelic, then you should learn by him. If the Rebbe seems to be mizalzal the mitzvahs, not so strong in observance of mitzvah, you're not supposed to learn by such a Rebbe. So they confronted Reb Meir. What is Reb Meir learning by Elisha ben Avuya? He learned by him after he gave up the whole religion. What was he learning by him? So he said that he's learned it enough to know what to accept and what not to accept from him. If you're a big Talmid Chacham and you'll know what's up to courses and what's not, then it's okay. But most people are not on that level like Reb Meir. They're not supposed to do like that. I remember one Rabbi Soloveitchik used to give a Yortzeit drasha for many, many years on his father's Yortzeit, on Gimel Shvat. So there were a few years that he was talking a lot about Acher, about Elisha ben Avuya, in the Chelik HaGoda. I remember on one occasion he had a suggestion. The Baskel only said the pasuk Shuvu Banim Shavavim. The Baskel didn't say Chutz Me'acher. But Elisha was a Tana, so he knew how to darshan psukim. So this pasuk says that the Gizbar sells the Sdei, some of his magdish the Sdei Achuzah, and then the Gizbar didn't succeed in having the magdish paid it. Machar Hasad Leish Acher. He sold the Leish Acher, so the Gemara has a drasha la'acher v'lo lebein. That if the Gizbar sold it to the son of the magdish, then it reverts back to become a Sdei Achuzah. The bein is Mamed Sdei Achuzah la'aviv. It reverts back to become a Sdei Achuzah. So they made a drasha on the pasuk la'acher v'lo lebein. So Acher Elisha ben Avuya made a drasha on this pasuk Shuva Banim Shavavim. You heard a Baskal coming out from the location where the Beis Hamikdash used to be. He lived after the Churban Abayis. And Baskal just said Shuva Banim Shavavim. So he made a drasha Banim Bein v'lo yacher. If he make a drasha Acher v'lo bein, so the same thing Bein v'lo yacher. He decided that he is Acher. He decided that he went so far away from Jewish religion that his tshuva wouldn't be accepted. And the other Tanaim said, you're wrong. They're all banim. One Tana says, the Jewish people are nikru banim and nikru abadim. The one Tana in Kiddushin, one Tana is of the opinion, and we assume that it's not so. They're also nikru banim. So the whole drasha was wrong. Shuva banim shabam. Jewish people are always banim. You can even do tshuva if you're far, far away. That was an iluyus. That Acher heard just the Baskal Shuva banim shabam. He made a drasha just like this drasha over here. Then the Gemara has more dinim of bein kam Tachtav. There's a Mishnah in Nazir, and the Gemara says it's halacha mash Sinai. The father was a Nazir, and the father designated karbanis at the end of the Naziris, 30 days, whatever, however long, minimum of 30 days. He designates karbanis to bring on the Yom Alos Yimein Israel, and then the father dies. And the son, or several of the sons, are also Naziris. So normally if the father set aside a korban because he was Machal Shabbos, the father dies, the son can't be marked with that korban because he was also Machal Shabbos with the father. It doesn't matter. The father set it aside for his aver. The son can't be marked with it. What do you do with it is a whole discussion in the Gemara. But the children can't be marked with it. So over here, the father set aside karbanos on Naziris because he was a Nazir. And if the children, the son or the children are Nazirim, so the Abei Megaleach on Naziris Aviv. That's the Lashon HaMishnah. Abei Megaleach on Naziris Aviv. When the Naziris is over, then the Nazir shapes off all of his hair with a razor. Shaves off the beard with the beard he doesn't shave off. People make a mistake about that. Kiddush is Rosho. The Nazir is allowed to shave the beard when he's a Nazir. He's not allowed to take a haircut. But he's allowed to shave his beard. And when the Naziris is over, he has to only shave off the hair on the head. That's Kodesh. The hair on the beard, if he wants, he can leave it. It was never included in the Din Naziris in the first place, and it's not included in the mitzvah of Tiglachas after it's all over. People think that the Nazir has to grow a beard. That's not correct. So the Din is Habei Megalech al Naziris Oliv. So that's also a din of Komtal. It's not a din of Yerusha. What he yarshins. He yarshins if the father was mafresh in the oil or a shlamim, then the Yisayim and the father dies before there was Korv. So it's Korv on behalf of the son, but the Gemara says only Mechap and Mikufya will not Mikivya. It's not the full kapor, it's a partial kapor, and that's why there was a machlokes hatanoim, or the Yorish Semech and Yorish Meimer. Is that enough of a bailus of the carbon to be called the bala carbon for smicha purposes and for tmura purposes? But by Nazir, it's the halacha Moshe Messinai, that the din is completely like that. So the Gemara is not true. It's a din like a ben kom tachasol. It's not a din of Yerusha. Ben kom tachasol. A ben megalech on the zero sod. So the Gemara has a shaila. Does the bchor get pishnai? Let's say the man has 2 sons, and he set aside a lot of korbanos for his naziris, and 2 of his sons are both nazirim. One is a bchor and one is not. So is there a din in kom tachtav? Is there a din of pishnai? Maybe kom tachtav. Maybe pishnai is only a din in Yerusha. When you get money, be Yerusha, you divide it among the children, so that bchor is entitled to pishnai. But maybe over here there's no din of pishnai. It's a din of kom tachtav. The Gemara is not sure. There was a din Torah here in America many years ago. Soloveitchik passed away already, I think, over 30 years, no? Died in 1993. Yeah, it's over 30 years. So, the years before he died, 10 years before he died, there was a din Torah between 2 brothers. The father was a Hasidisha, and the father had purchased plots in Chalkos Harabanim. I think on Har HaEzer it is, no? Wherever they bury them, not sure. So he bought for himself and his wife, and he had an extra one. So when he passed away, so he had 3 sons. So one son, the youngest son, so the shaila, who has the right to be buried next to the father? So the oldest son had smicha from Wayu. And he was in the rabbinate for a while. Then he went into business. The middle son took over the Hasidus of the father. So he dressed like Hasidic Rebbe, and he had a following, and he took over the name. Like a Kloisenberger Rebbe, Satmar Rebbe, Lubavitcher Rebbe, whatever his father was, he took over. And if the youngest son was not in the machlokes, so the oldest son said he's the bchor, so he wants to have the right to be buried next to the father. And the middle son said, "What do you mean? But I took over the rabbistva. I'm the memale mokum of my father. You're not the memale mokum. You're in business now." I remember when they sat shiva, they were sitting in 2 different rooms. They didn't get along. They didn't get along, so they're sitting shiva in 2 different rooms. So they were going to have a din Torah. Who's right? Does the bchor has the right? It's a shaila of kom tachtav. It's not a shaila of Yerusha, a shaila of kom tachtav. So the one who was in business wanted to go to the RCA Bezin, and the one who was a Chassidish Rebbe, they're not gervis the RCA Bezin. They want to go to some Chassidish Bezin. So they both agreed they'll go to Rabbi Soloveitchik, whatever he says will go. So they presented the case to Rabbi Soloveitchik. I wasn't there, but this is the way people said. Rabbi Soloveitchik said that traditionally in Europe, when there would be such a din Torah, the psak used to be kol hakodim zocha. Whoever dies first gets the right to be buried. So neither wanted it then. Neither wanted it then. But then the end of the story was that the older brother realized it's not right. He's not a Chassidish Rebbe. He didn't take over the father. He's in business. He had smicha from Oyo, but he went into business. So he agreed that the other brother. So the oldest brother is buried in the Wayu cemetery in Eretz Yisrael, and the middle brother is buried there next to the father. So that where they get that psak from Kol HaKodim Zocha, that's in Nazir. When the Mishnah has that din, Abei Megalech al Nazir Esavi, the father was a Nazir and he set aside money, he set aside korbanos, to bring after the Naziris is over. And then the father died before the Naziris was up. And he has children who are Nazirim. The Gemara has the Shaila, what if there are few children, does the Bechor get a double portion of the Karbanis, does it apply? It's an inyan of Kam Tachtav. It's not an inyan of Yerusha. Maybe Pishnaim doesn't apply. And what if there are several children and their Naziris doesn't end at the same time? So the Gemara has one suggestion that's Kol HaKodim Zocha. Whoever's Naziris ends earlier, he has the right to use all the Karbanis, not just to divide them among, maybe by contact of one child gets it. You don't. It's not like Yerusha that you have to divide it equally. So that's what they say. Rav Soloveitchik said in Europe, the tradition was if there would be such a din Torah, the psak used to be like that line in the Gemara in Nazir, that Kol HaKodim Zocha. So that's the topic of Kam Tachtav. So strictly speaking, again, we were talking about the Rashash's Kasha on the Tosfos in Sanhedrin, Daf Samaches on the base. Tosfos had two topics. One topic was, how can you have a ger katan and a Torah? Zechila katan is only with the Rabbanan. And the Gemara has a pasuk that talks about a ger katan. How can that be? So Tosfos gave one answer that Zachan le'adam shaloi b'fanav. That's only if the baby was born already. Then you megar the baby. What if you have a nachris who's muberis? So the Tosfos quotes the Gemara in Yavamis, muberish and this guy Rabbano and it's tzorach tefillah. The baby will not need tefillah in the mikveh. There's one tefillah for the mother and the baby together. So in that case, what's the din? Do you say Gershon is gar katan shenala dami? The bain is not related to the mother. So there's another Gemara in Yavamis. Tosfos quotes all that. Another Gemara in Yavamis, and you have muberis. A nachris is pregnant with twin boys. And then she was toivel in the mikveh l'shem geris. She wants to become a geris, and she wants the children to become gerim also. So the Gemara says the geris is good for all three, the mother and the two children, and they're related to each other. They're not related to the father. The father was a goy, so gerishon is our katan shenala dami, no longer related. Until the babies were converted, they were related to the father. After they convert, so you say. The mother is not related to the husband anymore, and the babies are not related. But if she converted while she was pregnant, so the kurva between the mother and the two brothers does remain. All three of them had the geris b'vasachas, and the Gemara says a chayav mishum eshesach min ha'em. Eshesach min av is a different din. Eshesach min ha'em is a different din. The din of Yibum is only if it's Eshesach min ha'av, not Eshesach min ha'em. So the Tosfos says, in such a case, there is a kurva between the mother and the two children, even after they're born. Because the gerus of all three was bevasachas. So Tosfos says, and maybe the din is in that case, so the baby is Jewish, you don't need to come on to Zachan. You don't need Zachan Adam Shlomo. Why? Because the mother said, I want to convert. So that's what we mentioned. Rabbi Kiveger asked Akasha, that would be good if you all do b'yarachimai. So there's only one body. But if you all do b'lav yarachimai, that's a machlokes hatanoim. And the Shaila had a paskin, machlokes Teri and Rabbeinu Tam, and Bava Kama, how you paskin. Where is that quoted in Shulchan Aruch, that machlokes Teri and Rabbeinu Tam, whether you b'yarachim or b'lav yarachimai? It's quoted in Hilchos Erev Yom Kippur, in Yishlad Kaparis. How many kaparas do you need? If a woman is pregnant, so if you say uber yerachimai, you only need one chicken for both. If you all do b'lav yerachimai, then you have to have a separate one for the mother and separate one for the uber. So the Bir Agra there has the whole story, all the marmakrams. It's a Tosfos in Bava Kama, machlokes Sdei and Rabbeinu Tam. How do we pass uber yerachimai or b'lav yerachimai? So Reb Kiveger is bothered with the kasha. If you all do b'lav yarachimai, so the mother is separate and the uber is separate. So the Gemara that says muberish and his gaira b'no en etzorach tefillah, the baby doesn't have to have. When the baby is born, he's born Jewish, and he doesn't have to have any tefillah l'shem gerus. Why not? Because he's yotze with the mother's tefillahs. But there was no das gerus on the baby. So is that also based on Zachan Le'adam Shlei B'fanav? That's Rabbi Kiveger. If you'll do Yerech, there's only one body, one person. So that one person wants to be Megar. The Uber is another limb, Yerech, like another limb of the mother. If you'll do Yerech, there are two people being this guy. So where's the Das Geras on the baby? So it's based on Zochadan B'Shlev. So why does Taisus say that's for sure Minat Torah? That's what we said. That the Radziner Rebbe has in his commentary on the Sdei Taris. It looks, they say that the Sefer that he put out, the Sdei Taris, looks just like a Gemara. So they insisted that it should print on every page. Sefer Sdei Taris, no one should think that it's a Gemara. You look at it, you see it's not a Gemara. It's not Rashi and Taisa. It has his commentary on the bottom of the page, but they insisted no one should think it's a Gemara. It is. Everything is based on Gemara. That's what the Gedolim insisted. So he has the Radziner Rebbe. He's known as the Baal HaTchelis. Radziner Rebbe was a big Talmid Chacham. So he's the one who did that work on the Sdei Taris. And he has this Chiddush, and the Chazon Ish has it, and they quoted the name of Rab Chaim Soloveitchik, quoting it from Abba Soloveitchik. Everybody says, and I think the Mikdash David, I think, also has the same thing. Mikdash David learned in Slabodka. So in the Kollel and Slabodka, they were learning Kachim. So he writes in the Hagdama to his Sefer that they started learning Kachim. Everything was so foreign. They didn't understand anything that's going on there. So they learned for a few years and they couldn't break into it. They couldn't figure out. They didn't get to first base. And then after a couple of years, they were chazering and learning. They finally cracked open the Inyanim. They started to understand it. And one of the conditions of joining the Kollel was that if you come up with any insights, you have to write it. You have to write it down. So he wrote encyclopedic essays on what's encyclopedic. They didn't have the Chazon Ish then. Chazon Ish has on Kachim. He didn't have that. I don't remember if he has the Sfas Emes. He didn't have as many songs as we have, but he knew every Rabbeinu Gershon, every Rashi, Tosas, Rambam, every Ravid, all the Ravids on the Torah's Katan. He knew everything that was available at that time. So he wrote long encyclopedic essays, and the Sefer is called Mikdash David. The first he wrote on Kachim, in the Kollel Slabodka, and then they're classics. It's fantastic. Then he wrote on Zvaim, and then he wrote on Taris. They have Mikdash David on all three. Mikdash David was a descendant of Rabbi Akiva Eger. So he became famous when he was very young. He became famous. He put out a sefer, HaEzer on Chuvas Rabbi Akiva Eger. I forgot what's the name of the sefer. Tzemach David. The Tzemach David, yeah. The Tzemach David is fantastic. So Rabbi Chanan Wasserman hired him sight unseen to give the top shia in Baranovich. He never met him. Then when he came, he was surprised to see that he was single. The top Rosh Yeshiva is a bacher, single guy, younger than everybody else. And he studied something terrible. He used to have a Rebbe here in Yeshiva, a drillman. He says he remembers when David Rappaport came to Baranovich to give the shia, they didn't know what language he was talking. He was talking Yiddish. They couldn't understand one word. He studied. He said he was absent-minded. He would walk on the streets and think to learn. He would bump into a lamppost. He would say, "Excuse me." He didn't realize that he thought it was a person. He was always thinking and learning. The Rabbi Chanan Wasserman was the brother-in-law of Rabbi HaEzer. So he traveled to him and he asked him, "What should I do? I made a mistake. I hired this Rebbe. He's single and he studies." So he says, "Single? He'll get married. That's a mu'moiver. He'll probably get married." He got married. And then in the middle of the war, they only had non-kosher food to eat. So he told all the people they should eat it. Because he himself didn't want to eat it, so he died from malnutrition. He didn't want to eat it. He knew his mechuyev to. He didn't want to, and he didn't want his wife to be an aguna. So when he was on his deathbed, he told a few people they should make sure that they're present when he dies, so that his wife won't have any problems. If she'll survive the war, she won't have any problems. After the war, she was Nitzon. She went there to Yisrael. There were problems, but ultimately they were mata her to remarry. The Eidim did know enough to be mata her. So again, we learned in our Gemara, Amar Avhuna Gerkat Matbila Mosa al Das Bezen. So we said over the teretz that all of these Gelim, the Radzina Rebbe, the Chazanish, and Rab Chaim, and so on, they all gave the same teretz. Even if you'll do Balav Yarachima, it's one person with two bodies. So since the mother wants the Gerus, that's not based on Zochel Adam Shlavon. It's one person. So the mother wants to be Megayer herself and the Uber. So that's not based on Zochen. So the din of Igdili Yechelim Limchas doesn't apply in such a case. Whenever you're Megayer a Katan based on Zochen, then that's a din in Zochen Adam Shlavon that we had the Gemara Bava Basra, wherever it was, Kuf Lamed Ches or something, one Chulan Daf Lamed Ches on the base. Different Gemara say whenever he did an act of Zochen for someone else, when he finds out about it, if his instinctive reaction, initial reaction is that he's not happy about it, then he breaks up the whole Zochen. But if you have so the Ger Katan, Rabbi Yosef says Igdili Yechelim Limchas, because it's based on Zochen. Based on Zochen. But if you have Dum Berish and his Gaira, it's not based on Zochen. It's one person with two, if you all do Balav Yerachim, it's two bodies. So it's an issue of Chatzitza. That's what the Gemara asks. If it's two Balav Yerachim, let the mother's body be a Chatzitza between the fetus and the water and the mikveh. It's an issue of Chatzitza, but it doesn't change the nature of the Gerus. The Isha wants Gerus for herself and for her Uber. It's all one person with two bodies. So that's not based on Zochen, so you can't say he did Yechelim Limcha. So the Achreinim say this on the page in Hilchas Gerus and Yerech. The Achreinim say that by Muberish and his Gaira, the Vlad cannot be Moicha later on. So I remember once one of the Rabbanim, there was some kind, I don't remember the whole story, there was some kind of a conference about Gerus. I think it's Rav Simcha Cook. He was making a whole Kavachaimer. It should be Yechelim Limchas. So I said, no, all the poskim say the favorite. Hey, Yechelim, and Yerech day on the page. They say Bamberish and his Gara, they can't be Moicha. They don't explain why. But this is the explanation that all the Gedolim gave. It's one person with two bodies. So it's not based on Zochen or other Shleibefonim. So there were two issues that the Tosfos discussed. How can you have such a thing as a ger katan on the level of the Raisa? How does the katan have any assets? How does he have any money? So the issue, how can you have a ger katan? So Tosfos Bayas asked the Kasha. The Gemara said, the Gemara sounds like it says, the ger katan, Gerus is based on Zochen Adam Shleibefonim. Because when you come to be Mizgaya, you have to have Das Gerus. Here the child, the infant, is an infant. He doesn't know anything that's happening. So there's no Das Gerus. How is it good? It must be based on Zochen Adam Shleibefonim. That's what it sounds like in the Gemara. So the Tosfos gives one answer in Sanhedrin, a wild answer. Gerus doesn't need Das Hager. It just, a pasuk, it can't be Megayer, a person, Bal Korchai. But the infant doesn't know anything. So it's not Bal Korchai. It doesn't have to be Midaito. You don't need Das, but you can't have Bal Korchai. That was the drasha from the pasuk. Chalebedish miknas kesev and malta also has the yochadot. That pasuk is by Korban Pesach. Chalebedish, like more ebedish for the ebedisha, makes a difference whether the ebed is owned by a man or by a woman. If the din is a milas ebed is me'akev the odam from eating the Korban Pesach, it should be the same thing. Whether the odam is a male or the odam is a female. It's a woman who owns an Eved Kanaini, and Eved Kanaini didn't get a bris milah. So the woman should also not be able to eat Korban Pesach. Whenever it says ish is either memait ish prat lekotten or ish prat leisha. It's memait something. Otherwise, it would have said Adam. It would use a different word. It wouldn't say ish. Ish is usually a drasha. So that's what the Gemara Eved ish v'lo Eved isha. Why the din is different? The Gemara says no. So the Gemara has different suggestions. What does that mean, Eved ish? Gemara says, "Evedish atamal bal korcha v'atamal benish bal korcha." If I own I buy an Eved Knaini. Let's say the man sells himself as an Eved Knaini, or there was a war between two countries. So the country who wins the war, that's an international halacha of kibush muchama, all sugi and gittin about kibush muchama. So kibush muchama, the country who wins the war, even though they went to the war be'isa, they started a war be'isa. The Russians just invaded another country and they're taking it over. Be'isa gama. It doesn't make a difference. Whichever country wins the war acquires ownership of all the property, the karka with the metalpolim and the people. So if they're kind of the people, the goyim are kind of the nation who wins the war, it's kind of all the people. And then they sell one of them to me as an eved, as a goyisha eved. So you're not allowed to have a goy around the house for a long period of time and make everything treif. They have to make sure that you're megayer him, so that strictly speaking, he can megayer the eved bal korchai. Eved ish atamal bal korchai. But the Gemara said it doesn't make sense. You're going to be megayer him bal korchai. He's not going to keep any of the mitzvahs. So it's not right to do that. It doesn't make sense. So the Gemara has a drasha. Eved ish atamal bal korchai v'atamal ben ish bal korchai. Can't be megayer a nochri against his wishes. But if you megayer a ger Katan, it's not bal korchai, and you don't need midaito. So why did the Gemara say that it's based on zochin? And Tosfos learns it's really based on zochin. And the Shach says that the Rashi seems to say that it's based on apotropos. What do you need apotropos? What do you need zochin? According to that line in Tosfos, Yatamal ben ish bal korchai. It can't be megayer goy because it's not bal korchai. The child is an infant. He doesn't know anything about anything. You don't need das gevis. So Tosfos explains the Gemara's comment over here that it's based on Zochen doesn't mean that makes it effective. Because of the din of Zochen Adam Shleifano, that's why the gevis is chal. No, the gevis is chal anyway. Because you don't need midaito, just bal korcha is no good. But the Gemara asks, Ma lana v'lat tzara hazos. That's what Tosfos is saying. What are we going to take every goy in the street, every goy of shekid, we're going to be megayer him? Is it we have a missionary complex that we want to make all the people go, leave him a goy. What do you need it for? So the Gemara says, no, we're doing him a favor. But it's not the Gemara's question was, wasn't, how does it work? That's not a question. You've been megayer with a person, it's not bal korchai. You can be megayer him, but the question is, malon of us. What do we need the headache for? What are we getting involved? So they say, no, you're doing the kid a favor. When he grows up, he'll be happy. He'll be a Jewish person. That was a big machlokes in Europe and in America. What if a non-observant family wants to, they don't have any children, they want to adopt a goyish child and convert him? So Rab Soloveitchik was of the opinion, and many others were of the opinion, that it's only considered as chus if the parents are observant and they commit themselves to give him a Jewish education, that he should be Hashem and mitzvahs. But to be converted by a bezdin on behalf of parents who are not going to give him a religious education, it's going to be machal Shabbos, he's going to eat treifas. So it's better that he should remain a goy. You're not doing him a favor, you're doing him a disservice by making him Jewish. It's going to be chayiv karis and chayiv misa for all the other areas that he does. And others held that Rav Moshe held not so. Rav Moshe in his Chuvas assumes it's as close to be Jewish, even if you're going to be a non-observant Jew. In Europe, that was a big machlokes. I think this Sdei writes that they're one of the Rabbanim, and I think one of the Rabbanim in Frankfurt disagreed, I think, with Rabbi Yitzchak Hanan. I think Rabbi Yitzchak Hanan held also like that. It's not called the schus unless the parents are observant and they're going to raise the child to be observant. So a big Talmid Chacham wrote a collection of chuvas that he disagreed with him. So if I'm not mistaken, I think the Sdei writes, it was a chutzpah on the part of that rabbi in Frankfurt who disagreed with Rabbi Yitzchak Hanan on this issue. He thought Al Pi Pasha Davar Pasha, that it's only a schus. If it's only a taiva, it's considered doing the baby a favor to convert him to become Jewish. So the Gemara has in a few places. Igdili yichalim limchas. Why is that's Amr Rabbi Yosef? Igdili yichalim limchas. So the Pashtus is that it's based on Zoch and the other Shleiv, or it's based on Apotropos. But if you say like that opinion in Taisus, that's not the explanation why the Geris is Chal. Zoch and the other Shleiv. That's the explanation. What are we getting involved? What do we need this headache for? So the Gemara is not a headache. It's going to turn out to be good in the end. So why is it Gdili Yichalim Limchos? So Rabbi Yashiv felt that the Ikab Pshat and the Gemara and Ksubis is like the Ritva has. You can say like that Tosfos and Sanhedrin, that a Ger Katan, you don't need Zachin to be Megayer him. It's not Bal Korchai. You just can't be Megayer a person Bal Korchai. But he's an infant, so it's not Bal Korchai. But still a Ger has to have Mila, Tvila, and Kabbalas on Mitzvahs and a carbon. So he needs Kabbalas on Mitzvahs. Where's the Kabbalas on Mitzvahs? Kozman is a Katan. It's not Shach to do Kabbalas on Mitzvahs. He's a Lav Bardas. What Higdilu, when he becomes of age, Al Pidin, a Katan is considered a Lav Bardas. Even if he's a Vilna Goyen, he's a bigger genius than all the adults. A Katan Al Pidin is a Lav Bardas. But once he becomes Bar Mitzvah, Bardas, so then you need Kabbalas on Mitzvahs. And if the what do you mean? Well, Megayer a Ger Katan, so you don't need Das. He's not a Bar Hachi of Kabbalas on Mitzvahs. So whatever, if it's not Shaykh, you don't need it. When it becomes Bar Mitzvah, then you do need Kabbalas on Mitzvahs. So the Ritva learns, that's what I mean. Yichalim Limchas, it's not the same as the Gemaras in Baba Basra and in Chulin, that whenever you do an act of Zachin, when the person on whose behalf we did this Chiyah finds out about it, he can be Moicha. If Tzavach Mikor, Tzavach Mikchila B'atzov, he can undo Zachin. It's not based on that. And Rabbi Yosef had a different thing. You have to convene a bezin of 3. No other Rishon says this. Rabbi Yashiv was machmer like that Ritva. He held that's the Yikadin. Yikadin Cham Limchas has nothing to do with the Gemaras there, that whenever you do an act of Zachin, you can be Moicha. Yikadin Cham Limchas, because once it becomes a Gadol, and it's possible he's a Bardas, and it's possible to have Kabbalas on Mitzvahs, then Kabbalas on Mitzvahs is Miyakim. So you have to convene a bezin of 3. No one ever did that. The Ritva did it, if he ever had any Gerim. But no one ever does that. When a couple adopts a child and they convert the child, and the kid is Bar Mitzvah, he's Bar Mitzvah. You don't convene a bezdin and have him be Mekabel on Mitzvah. Rabbi Yasha is Choshish for that. That's a different way of learning the Gemara. Why he didn't become us. But the way we usually learn is that Rabbi Yosef said it's the same as the Gemara in Baba Basra and Chulin, that when the person on whose behalf we did the act of Zachin finds out about it, so then he can, if his instinctive reaction is he doesn't want it, he undoes the whole Zachin. So that's a question, because the Gemara had the 3 pshatim in the beginning of the second parak in Kiddushin. The Gemara was speaking about the psuk Nasiach and Nasiach Lamata Tikchu. What was that all about? So we explained the Rambam in Perek Aleph and Hilchas Shumas writes, what was that all about? That is to make the kibush into a kibush rabbin. They made this, the Nisim of all of the Shvatim represented all the Shvatim. They made a Chalukas Haaretz before they conquered the land, in order that the conquest should be a kibush rabbin. So how can you have? So we said, how can you have the machlokes hatanaim where the kibush yochel is lav shmei kibush? That's what it says in the Chumash. You need the Nisim. Everybody agrees you need kibush rab. So we suggested, and Eretz is all proper. Agvulas haaretz. Everyone agrees that you need kibush rab. The machlokes hatanaim is only on Surya. That's arotzas on the surface. That's based on the pasuk at the end of Parshas Ekev, I think. the very end of Parsha, Kol Mokum Shetidach Kafrag Lechem Bo Lechem Nesativ. So Kol Mokum called as a ribui, even Arotzis on the Sophins. Any area that the Jewish army will conquer, and they'll add it on to Eretz Yisrael, so the Kedusha will spill over from Eretz Yisrael if it's contiguous to Eretz Yisrael. So that's a machlokes hatanaim. What they need, kibush rabbim for Arotzis on the Sophins. But for Eretz Yisrael proper, that everyone agrees, that's Nasiach and Nasiach, you need kibush rabbim to make it Eretz Yisrael. Then Arotzis on the Sophins, we paskin, even there you also need kibush rabbim. That's a machlokes. So the Gemara had three pshatim on that pasuk, Nasiach and Nasiach. So the first pshat was rejected, the second pshat was rejected. First pshat was that the Nesiim represented the members of the Shevet based on the institution of Shlichus. So when the Rebbeinu Shalom picked them out, that was a recommendation. But the Rebbeinu Shalom didn't have the right to appoint them. All the people in Shevet had a vote for him. There was only one candidate. But if they would not want the candidate that the Rebbeinu Shalom recommended, so they'll appoint someone else. Okay. That was the first part. Then the Gemara rejects it because they were Ktanim. There was certainly some Yisraelim Ktanim, and they can't have a Shlich. So the Gemara second Shavuot that is based on Zochen, and this is the Mokan Chumash for the institution of Zochen Adam Shlevifonah. So how can it be one Tanim Bava Basal that Zochen Adam Shlevifonah is only a din with the Rabbanon? The answer is because we rejected the second shot. That's not what it's based on. It's based on Apotropos. It can't be based on Zochen because Zika and Nichele Behavan and Nichele Bibika. So it's not always going to be a schus. Gemara said, no, this is the mock of Apotropos. And Apotropos, you can appoint, the Gemara quotes the Loshen, Apotropos, you can appoint Lachuv, not only Lischus. Zachem Abishlavifanav is only when a person does on his own, has to look like a schus. But Apotropos has a right to do things that look a little bit, not necessarily going to be Lischus. Lachuv Atmanas Lischus. So that's why should Apotropos be different? Because Apotropos is always done under the auspices of a bezin. So the Gemara there has a machlokes amaroim. What if he Bezin appointed an Apotropos, and Apotropos sold and bought and dealt? The children are young; they don't know anything, and he was dealing with their property. And then, when they become bar mitzvah, they're not happy with what he did. They say, Yecholim limchas, amen, Yecholim limchas. So that's a machlokes. So we were bothered with the kasha when we were learning. So a few of the people pointed it out. There we paskin, en Yecholim limchas. Whenever it's Apotropos, en Yecholim limchas. Because Apotropos is always done under the auspices of a bezin. Zochen Adam Shlevifonah was not under a good Samaritan runs in and he does on his own. Apotropos is when it's Bezin is supervising it, so it's stronger. So that's why we paskin en Yecholim limchas. So how come over here? The third pshat in the Gemara was that Nasiach and Nasiach Lamate was based on Apotropos, so that's what the Shach interpreted in Rashi, that Ger Katan is based on Apotropos. The Shach with the Pnei Yeshua, they say it's based on Apotropos. So how can the Gemara say Higdila Yecholim Limchas? We paskin over there. Whenever an Apotropos does, it's any Yecholim Limchas. So some of the boys suggested, it's not a bad suggestion, some of the boys suggested, if you say like Rabbi Yashiv's Bitvah, so Yecholim Limchas has nothing to do with the other Gemara. It's a different reason, because you need Kabbalah Sol Mitzvahs. And then we say he was never Jewish in the first place. Since when he becomes by mitzvah and he doesn't want to accept Kabbalah Sol Mitzvahs, so you can't be a Jew, you can't have Geras without Kabbalah Sol Mitzvahs, even though we thought we didn't Megayer him years ago when he was first born. A month after he was born, we Megayer him. But then when he reaches this point and he doesn't want to be Kabbalah Sol Mitzvah, and says, nothing was chal. Because you can't have a person who's Jewish, then he loses the Kedushas Yisrael. So you have to say, undoes the whole, everything is Batlam Mevutlam Eikar. We say like Rabbi Yashiv is Nicha, but that was not the common practice for many centuries. That was clearly not the practice. They never used to convene a bezin to have the child be Mekabel on mitzvahs at the age of bar mitzvah. So some of the boys suggested, the Gemara says the reason why Higdila ein yechadam limchas when it's an apotropis is because makach bezin yofen. So maybe that lashon means Bezdin has the power, if they choose to declare hefke bezin hefke. They can declare that your jacket belongs to him and his jacket belongs to you. They have to have a good reason. You can't just arbitrarily. You can't make everybody crazy. But if the Bezdin wants to and they have a good reason why, they have the right, they have the ability to say hefke bezin hefke. So it could be that that's what the Gemara says there. The Gemara says, we machloikas, whenever the apotropis did something, whether Yechalim Limchas, we pass on Yechalim Limchas, the Gemara's Lashon is Dim Kain, Makach Bezn Yofen. So it could be that halacha is really only a takana de Rabbanan, Makach Bezn Yofen, because Bezn has the power, if they choose to, they have a right to be mafka someone's property, that they can declare that the Mikra Adini should have been Yechalim Limchas. Because apotropis is a fancier form. That's what we said. There's a machlokes Rishonim, the Rambam and the Ravid. Machlokes Rishonim, whether apotropis is a fancier form of zochen, or it's a totally different apotropis dinikid bailim. So if it's apotropis dinikid bailim, so how can it be not yechalim libchas? But apotropis is a fancy form of zochen. So whenever you have zochen, when the person finds out he can't be meicha, he can't undo it. So how come over here? By apotropis, they can't be machzor. The Gemara's lashon makach bezin yofen maybe means it's a takana de rabbanan. They're going to undo everything that Bezin did. Makach bezin yofen. Bezin has the power whenever they feel it necessary to declare hefka bezin hefka. So here they declare hefka bezin hefka. They don't let you. They don't let the children be moicha later if the apotropis sold and bought and so on. But it could be that that's only in the area of dinim ominous. But over here by ger katan, if it's din apotropis, the way the Shachanip and Yeshua learned in the Rashi, when it's Medina Apotropis, but here it's Isa Beheta. So they can't, Hefka Bezna Hefka doesn't apply to Isa Beheta, it only applies to Dinim Ominous. It could be that that's why over here we say, because Mikra Din Apotropis is a fancier form of Zachin. And Zachin the Din always is Yechalim Limchas. If your instinctive reaction, initial reaction is, you're not happy with it, you can undo it. And by Mominus, we say Hefka Bezna Hefka Makach Bezna Yofa, but by Yisa Veheter, you have to leave it on the Yikra Din. Possibility. That's a possibility. Okay, this was old business.
Maybe?
Yeah.
According to Rav Soloveitchik and the Sdei, is it Muhach that don't hold like that Teretz and Tosos that you don't need Das, that it's enough to not be Bal Korcha? Because they're assuming that if it's not a supposed to the child, the whole Geras doesn't go through. According to Tosos, it's just we shouldn't get involved, but if the parents are insisting, we could do it.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Rav Moshe holds like that Shita, like that Tosos. That's a surprising opinion. A Geras doesn't need Das as long as it's not Bal Korcha. That's what that was one of the suggestions of Tosos. Well, one of the suggestions. So what did we do? Last week, I think we did a little bit in Siman Vov. I think we spoke about Kohanim as Manazeh. No? The Pischei Teshuvah quotes Marash. No, not the Pischei Teshuvah, the HaEzer. The HaEzer quotes. The HaEzer was before the Pischei Teshuvah, much before. The HaEzer quotes the Marash Dam. I think it's from Italy, no? The Modena. Marash Dam held that Kohanim as Manazeh Suffolk Kohanim, so we don't hold like that. Yeah. So the Shulchan Aruch has, we spoke about Re'ech HaGet, I think. I said the Pri Yitzchak, no? That's me. I bet so. There's a din of, well, let me first do Sifches. HaEzer Hizaina. What's the definition of a Zaina? So the Shulchan Aruch says, Kol She'ena Bas Yisrael, a non-Jewish woman, or a Georis. So the Gemara says, even Lo Nivalo Ben Achuzah. We spoke about that also last week. What about a Georis? Lo Nivalo Ben Achuzah. Some of that came up with this idea that a Georis Lo Nivalo Ben Achuzah is only Asur L'Kuna Midirabban. The simple pshat in Gemara is clearly not so. The Gemara talks about the Mochames Midyon that they only, in the war, you only kill the soldiers. You don't kill the civilians. So years ago, the women were never drafted into the army. So Noshim Betaf, the younger age people are not soldiers, they're civilians, and the women were never drafted into the army. So they're the civilians. So you can let them live. So they didn't kill any of the women. So then Moshe Rabbeinu got upset. They caused the Jewish people to sin. The women of Midian caused the Jewish people to sin. So they said, Rabbi Shalom told them, any of the women over the age of 3, Roy Labia. Anisha is only Roy Labia from the age of 3 on, and a man is only Roy Labia from the age of 9 on. That's the next Mishnah in Ksubas. It's got to be the next discussion in the Gemara. So the pasuk says that they can let the women, for the captives from Midian, the females younger than 3, they can allow them to live. So I forgot the lotion of the pasuk. So the Gemara in Kiddushin, the end of Kiddushin has a machlokes where the Giyorish and his guy Reb Chusim Bashal Lashon Ve'emecha, is she allowed to marry a kohen? The Pascha not allowed to marry a kohen. So clearly she was not Nibala ben Achuzah. And so that's a machlokes in the Gemara. Lochem means even Pinchas HaKohen is allowed to marry these girls. I mean, Lochem, the Jewish people don't have to kill them. They can leave them alive, let them live, but it doesn't mean that Kohanim are allowed to marry them. So the Pashup Shat Nigmar is that this topic of this Garib Chusim Bashal Shani Lamecha is a topic that Raisa. It's not a machlokes with the Rabban only. It's a din deraisa. That's what the Loshan Rambam is over here. He's Zaina, a Nochris, or a Giyarish, and his guy. The Nochris is also a Zaina. There's a Mishnah in Bechiris that if there's a Kohen who is married to a Grusha, a Kohen is Metamel Mesim, he violates the dinim of Kahuna. So you don't let him be makar karbonis in the Beis Hamikdash. That's a pashup shot. It's a penalty with the Rabbanan. Pashup shot. There's a Raibet on Torah's Kohanim who seems to hold that it's a din deraisa that he's considered a cholol temporarily. Kolzman that he's married to the Grusha. He's considered a cholol min haTorah. The pashtus in the Mishnah is that it's only a knas with the Rabbanan. It's not a din min haTorah. It's a, believe it or not, that they're Raibet. He used to be, the chief rabbi used to be Rabbi Ram Shapira for a while. His son is now the head of Merkaz. He used to be the Rosh of Merkaz Harav, Rabbi Ram. And now his son is the one who gave the shir on Monday, Rabbi Yankev Shapira. So Rabbi Ram Shapira had a nephew whose name was Rabbi Lezer Shapira. He was an unbelievable bucky. So he was on the Bezdin Elyon for Irurim. They have like a Supreme Court whenever a lower Bezdin has a shaila, so they send it to them. He was a fantastic bucky. So he said Dr. Lamb wanted him to come to the YU for a year. So he was a bucky and everything. So he's the one who pointed out to us. He used to talk to the and say the most crazy thing. We would tell him, you're off your mind. It shows him where it says. He knew all the crazy quotations. Unbelievable. So he knew this Ravid on Torah's Kohanim. That the Ravid sounds like it's a din deraisa, but we assume it's a penalty with the Rabban. If the Kohen violates a dinim of Kohen, he's married to a Grusha. Or he's Metamel Mesim, so you don't allow him to be a makar komponis in the Beis Hamikdash. Does it go, you shouldn't allow him to get the first aliyah, you shouldn't permit him to duchen either? So the tour, the Beis Yosef have, that was a big machlokes. And the Mishnah Brura writes that the majority of the Gaonim who took a stand on this held that the penalty is only restricted to Hakrovas Karbonos. So the Bir Alocha is surprised in Hilchas Nesias Kapayim. He's surprised why the Shulchan Aruch paskins l'chumer. that the Kohen is married to a Grushim, the time of the Mason is not allowed to duchen, not allowed to give him the first Aliyah. If the Rov or the Rishainim, the Rov or the Goinim held that it's only a penalty, it's in Tchairis. It's only going to get the Hakrobus Karbonis. So that's his kasha. Why did the Shulchan Aruch say the Chum? So that's a Shaila. Let's say a man didn't know that. A man is married to a Grusha, and he's a Kohen, and he duchens, and then he realizes that it says he's not allowed to duchen in the Shulchan Aruch. So do you have to humiliate him in public? Here it says you should. If a man is Kohen is married to a Grusha, he put him in Cherem here in Sivov. She put him, the husband and the wife put him in Cherem, and no one should deal with him in business. We're going to put the people that deal with them in business in the Cherem until he divorces the wife. That's we're supposed to do that, but we're not going to get anywhere. They'll just think that we're Khomeinis. Makanos Achetetzi Nafsho, to be kof al mitzvahs doesn't apply in our society. So they'll say we're lunatics. You won't accomplish anything by forcing people. So you put him in Cherem, it's not going to help. So maybe you should allow him to do it. Maybe you should allow him to get the first aliyah. That's questionable. That's the Mishnah Berurah raised the issue. Anyway, here, there used to be a rabbi in Paris, Rabbi Rabibo or something like that, a Sfardi. They say he was a big Talmid Chacham. I never met him. And he insisted that a Kohen who's living with a non-Jewish woman is allowed to do it. Kohen is living with married to a Grusha, Zayna Halala, you don't let him duchen. But a Kohen married to a Nachris, you do. Why? Because that's not a Kahuna Dik Isser, that's a Isser on all of Klal Yisrael. Whoa, so therefore what? No. It is a Kahuna Dik Isser. The Shulchan Aruch quotes a Lashon HaEzer Hizona, Kol She'ena Bas Yisrael. She remains a Zayna, even after she converts, she remains a Zayna, but she was a Zayna originally. True, there is an Isser for Kol Yisrael to live with a Nachris, but there's an additional Isser for a Kohen. The Kohen lives with a Nachris, he's around 2 Isurim. Isser Zayna and Isser Nachris, both. The Gemara, it's a whole sugi in Sanhedrin. The Gemara has a Rosh Tevis. A Kohen lives with a Nachris, Chayv Aleha 4 Averis, Nashgo or Nashga, the Rosh Tevis. Neither Shivcha Goya Zayna, and neither Shivcha Goya Eshesish. That's Nashgo or Nashga, it's 2 Rosh Tevis. He used to joke years ago that in YU everything is Rosh Tevis. YU and Akum, Albert Einstein College of Medicine, Akum, everything. So they thought that we made up not by not. Not by not, the Gemara. If you cook some part of the food and a fleshig pot, does the part of the food become fleshig or not? So it said not by not. So they thought all the Rosh Tevis in the world were invented by YU. That's not from YU. Not by not this in Yeridea. Anyway, but the Gemara has this Rosh Tevis. Now, Ashgo on Ashgad, neither Shivcha Goya Zayin and neither Shivcha Goya Eshes. What are they for Yisrael? But it's clear from the Shulchan Aruch that the Nachris is also a Zayna, and the Kohen who's married to the Nachris is in violation of Yisui Nachris. He's intermarried with a Nachris, and he's also a Zayna. He's violating Isur Zayna. If the woman is practiced Mishka Behema, or even if she was Nervaz Bal Korcha by Behema, so the Gemara says, the Ein's Nus Le Behema. That's not called a Zayna. On Zayna is only if she had tashmish with a human being, with a person. But with a Behema, that's not called. The Rishonim say it's not called, it's not called Gili Arayis, because it's not a person. It's a different kind of an Isa. It's a strange Isa. The Gemara had one time was of the opinion, Paneh Habo al Apnuya is considered a Zayna. Whenever a girl has nus out of marriage, she wasn't married to the boy, so the Gemara says we don't pass on like that Tana. There's one Tana Rab Lezer, Paneh Habo al Apnuya. The Rambam says that Paneh Habo al Apnuya is an Avera Deraisa. Let's see a Kedeshim in Bnei Yisrael. The Raiva disagrees with the Rambam. But the Rambam holds that that's an Issa Deraisa. So the Nasukelim and the Rambam say, he got it from that sheet, and we don't pass like that sheet. Paneh Habo al Apnuya. Asor Zaina, but we do accept part of what that Tana said, that it is an Issa Deraisa. That's the Rambam holds. Pana Abalam no is an Issa Deraisa. So then the Shulchan Aruch says, what else is included in Zaina? An Achuzah or a Giyaris. A woman who's Nibala the Pasala, Akum Nibala the Akum, the Ebiknaini, L'chalal Ula Mamzer. What if the woman is Nibala to Chavi Lavin? So that's a machlokes of Rishonim. That's a question. The woman was Nibala to a Mitzvah Adaimi Amani Mayovi. We don't have any of them. We don't have any of those nationalities anymore. Mitzvah Adaimi is only Dor Shlishi Yavalahemid. Amani Mayovi is even Esadoris is also. Well, let's say the woman is Nibala a Pnuya, she Nibala a Panri. So that's not called a Zayin. So the Shmuel quotes that there is some Rishonim, but this is the Rambam. The Rambam says like this. So he quotes that some Rishonim disagree. Who's it? The Smag, I think. And they pasken that if the woman is Mizana Pana Bala Pnuya every week with a different boyfriend, so that's Mamish Zayin. So other Rishonim hold that that's also called a Zayin. So the Achronim say, let's say the girl goes to college, so every year she has a different boyfriend, but she's always makpid, and during the year, only this boyfriend. Next year she has a different boyfriend. So since she's living the kaviyah, so all year long she's makpid, not the sleep of anybody else. So that's not called Zayin. But if she's indiscriminately, they're all Jewish. If Nivel ala Akum, that for sure is a Zayin. But if Nivel ala Yisraelim, and she doesn't have kavua, a whole year she has one boyfriend. Every week she sleeps with someone else. So the Beis Shmuel recommends that one should be machmer on that's also included in Zaina. What's the din of Kala? So the din of Kala here is Sif Hey, Siman Vav Sif Hey. Kala means Yatsu Kala Leisha Shenis Katsha. The rumor has it. The rumor has it means Eid Mi Pi Eid. If you have two Eidim come, they have to be made if Nei Balvin. Can only be Mekal. It says in Parshas Mishpatim, who would bevolov. You always have to give Haggadah Seidus b'fnei Balvin. Let's say they say my behema was mazik someone. They have to testify in the presence of the owner of the behema, not in the presence of the behema, the presence of the owner of the behema. Would bevolov, you have to have Haggadah Seidus b'fnei Balvin. So what if you have over here? Rumor has it that the woman is married. A rumor has it that the woman is a grusha. She just moved to our neighborhood. What do you mean rumor has it? It's Eid Mi Pi Eid. The people in the neighborhood can't come to Bezdin and say, we know for a fact the woman is, we didn't attend her wedding. We heard. That's Eid Mi Pi Eid. So if they're prepared to come to Bezdin and testify in the presence of the woman, if they're just going to tell the Bezdin secretly, but they don't want to say B'fnei Balvin, Ram Soloveitchik said, so it's not even Eid Mi Pi Eid. Eid Mi Pi Eid is no good min HaTorah. But with the Rabbanan, they made a chumrah by my laws of the Yuchsin, that if you have an Eid Mi Pi Eid, that the woman is an Eishes Ish. So you choshesh for that with the Rabbanan. If the Eid Mi Pi Eid, if the people are prepared to testify in the presence of the woman that she is a grusha, that she is a, and then the woman will challenge them and say, how do you know? Who told you that? She has to say where he heard it from. Just says, I don't want to give Haggadah Seidus in the presence of the woman. So that's not Eidus at all. Even the Rabbanan is not Eidus. Eid Mi Pi Eid is good with the Rabbanan, l'chumra, if they're made, if Nei Balvin. What if the Eid Mi Pi Eid says that the woman is a chalutza? Chalutza is only asura mid the Rabbanan to the Kohanim. Grusha is asura mid the chalutza mid Rabbanan. So that there are two girses in the Gemara. The Rishonim have a machlokes. If the rumor has it, Eid Mi Pi Eid, that's called Kala. Kala has it that the woman is a chalutza. Did they introduce the chumrah of Kala even by a din de Rabbanan, or only by dinim deraisa? So that's Shulchan Aruch. They quote the two opinions. Okay, very good. So we chazed on. So what are we going to do on Sunday? The next Gemara. Okay.
Yeah.
Next Gemara.
I love this.